If you don't have a clear vision about what you want to do, I can't really foster that. I can't really push you in a certain direction if you are not clear. It doesn't have to be 100%, but at least you're pretty close to know exactly what you want to do. And sometimes that can be a problem because people, they have an idea, but ideas don't necessarily translate to reality. You have to have some other things that go behind it. Probably the biggest obstacle that I run into is just finding really good collaborative partners. A lot of times people, I think about this story about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And David Salzman tells a story about how they got the deal to do the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Him and Quincy Jones were going to produce together. And he said that everything was great. They signed the paperwork, they was going to do sure thing. And he said that after that, Quincy Jones never came to help him on any of the shows. He felt like his part was over with. And so when you partner with people, it's important to me. It's almost like being married. It's important that you have very clear expectations for people, what it is that they bring to the table.
Hi, everyone. Today on Melting Pot, we're diving into the vibrant world of storytelling, of film and fatherhood with a guest who wears many hats. He's a filmmaker, he's a mentor, he's global creative, and he's also a proud dad. My guest today is John Wayne. Thank you so much for joining me today, John.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always humbled when people allow me on their platforms because if you said yes to me, you probably said no to someone else.
No, absolutely. Your profile is so intriguing that I did absolutely need to have this conversation with you. So thank you for joining me today. So let's get a little bit of a background on you. I understand that as you mentioned earlier, you're born in Chicago, but you live in Houston. So just a little bit on your background before we actually dive into talking about all these different hats that you wear.
Okay. So I didn't set out in my life as a child to want to be a filmmaker. That's not necessarily something I wanted to do per se. But the universe has a way of making things manifest, and they have a way of pointing you in certain directions, even when you sometimes are trying to go in the opposite direction. So I was a pre-med major. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to focus in on older people care. And the year I was supposed to try to figure out what medical school I was going to go to, I got a call from this production manager working on this indie film and said that, hey, I had left an answer machine message about working on the movie. And I said, no, I didn't. And she said, yes, you did. And I honestly, to this day, I don't remember doing it. But in any case, it was a movie called Scenes for the Soul. They needed a second assistant director to work on the movie. So at the time, we were going into summer and I was a manager at a parking garage. I had just lost my job. And so I figured it sounds intriguing. So I went in and talked to the first assistant director. I had a suit and tie. I was all dressed up. And about 5 minutes into the conversation, he realized I couldn't help him do anything because I know nothing about film.
Right.
But she called me back like a week later and said, hey, I can't give you that job, but would you interested in being a production assistant on the film in the art department? And I said, yeah. She said they were working 16 hours a day, 6 weeks straight, 6 days a week, and the pay was $50 a week. And I said, yes. It amazed me to the day that I even said that. But just the way the universe works, the movie was called Scenes for the Soul. It was director George Tillman's first film out of film school. George went on to do Notorious, Man of Honor, the Barbershop series, done a lot of big movies, but this is his first film out of film school. And so I worked it on with him. I met another guy who didn't go to film school either. And after that, it was the rest is history. So I happened just to be in the right place at the right time. The funny thing about that is, even though I was a pre-med major, which is, I think about this all the time, I'm not really good with people being in pain and blood and needles. I'm not really good with that. And I don't know why. I think it was mostly, honestly, if I think about it, it was a lot of other people telling me this is what I should do instead of me just finding my path. And I realized that just wasn't my path.
Okay. Okay. So that's really how, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes the universe has a way of leading you up to something which you never ever imagined that you would that would become your life, really.
Yeah.
What then inspired you? You've done sort of music videos, feature films, a documentary, maybe more than one. How has your approach from being a production assistant on that film to doing what you're doing today, how has your approach to storytelling actually evolved over the years?
So with me, with projects that I worked on, a lot of it has to do with just me honestly just being open. I'll listen to people who come and pitch stuff, or other company distributors or production company come to me about working on projects. So it's really be me about just being open to the process. A lot of times people have, especially as I'm gonna give you a story about when I was doing music videos. When I used to do music videos, especially when I started directing, a label would send over a song to me, and then I would talk to them and I'd talk to the artist, and I come up with a concept what I think would work. When I was younger, if they didn't want to do my idea, I just didn't want to do
Yeah.
it. Over time, I realized that when people have, especially artists, when they have ideas in their mind about what they've listened to a song a million times, I've listened to it maybe about 10 or 15 times. They have an idea, the vision they want, and until they get that vision out their head, there's really nothing that anybody can do to kind of change it from that. And from an artist, I understand that, and so I had to take the more approach of being more collaborative as I've gotten older, to like, what is it that you want to do, and what's the reality of what you want to do? Because sometimes things that are on paper doesn't really necessarily translate to reality, and so I try to guide them in that particular aspect. With me, with projects, is really about really being open to the process, being creative, and trying to find ways to collaborate that I'm just not looking at this stuff. It's other people looking at it too. So I want to produce things that other people want to view too, not just me.
Yeah, because when it's collaborative, it's always a lot more interesting, and it brings out things that you would otherwise not imagine or would not
Yeah.
have been thought of, or the other person may not have been thinking about it. So I think collective contribution and ideas, and that's what the creative world is all about anyways. So that's
Yeah, it's point of view. I have a certain point of view. I am the sum of all my experiences. And based off those experiences, I'm either creative through looking through the eye of my experiences or seeing other people from an outside point of view of looking at their experiences. Another creative who comes, because I work with a lot of creative, I have a writing partner, I'm writing for the last 30 years, I have producing partners. They bring their own perspective. And so I usually come up with ideas and concepts, but a lot of times they come up with things from points of view that I didn't consider, that I didn't even imagine, because that's just not in my wheelhouse, or that's from not from my perspective. And so it enhances characters and enhances ways that we approach projects to be on a level to where a lot of people can get something from it, that they can ascertain something from it and they can connect with it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. So when did you start your production company, Londyn Town Pictures? And as you mentioned before we started the conversation, that London is the name of your daughter, and that's what inspired you to name your production house Londyn Town Pictures. So when did you start it, and what was the mission of your company?
So when I started out, and as I said, I started working on the film, and then I met another guy. We started doing music videos. When in Chicago and just in America back during that time, when people wanted to do music videos, they either went to New York or LA. There was really nobody necessarily in Middle America doing that. It just wasn't, because we did it in film. I come from film. Develop the film, and we decided in Chicago that we were going to start producing music videos in Chicago. And that led to me starting a company called JWS Productions at the time, at the beginning. And I've done probably about 200 music videos from artists all over the world. And that was like my focus. When I got to a certain part of my life and I wanted to, music videos are really great ways to get your creative ideas out there. The issue with them per se is the fact that you don't own a song or the IP or the intellectual property. So once you get the last payment from them, that's it. You move on, and it's now you need to go and try to get another music video. And so I was looking for ways to be more sustaining of what my creativity is, and also maintain the IP of the project without feeling like I'm just doing stuff and just not really reaping the benefits of it. So once I had a child, I decided, at the time it was my wife, she suggested that I change the company name to Londyn Town. And the focus was television and film, the creating IPs from that, either from my own self or other people, other creatives. That way, that's more sustaining. I don't really do a whole bunch of music videos now. I do some, but mostly they're from songs because we do a full music soundtrack. We do all the original music. So sometimes I'll do a music video, I'll direct it. Sometimes I'll let other people do it, but I'll direct the music video for the songs we do. But my focus is in television and film.
Okay, so let's talk about that then, because I read up a little bit and I watched the trailers of Read All Over, False Prophets, and a documentary called Greenwood Avenue. And the commonality between all these projects was how you tackle unique social themes.
Mhm.
And there seems to be a pattern. So,
Yeah.
how do you choose these stories that you want to tell, and why this particular genre, not genre, but this particular social theme?
That's very interesting because I'm glad you were able to ascertain it because social issues is probably one of the reasons why I started to do films. When I wanted to do, I did two other films back in the days. I was the guy who was selling the DVDs to the mom and pop stores. So I had, I was that guy. But my first really wide received movie was called Red All Over. It's about gun violence and mental health. And I remember when I went to go do the movie, I had a couple of obstacles. One of the obstacles when you're trying to get institutional financing for films is that you need what they call a completion bond. And if you don't, it's like an insurance policy for the investors. But the way that you get a completion bond is you have to have done a movie. I had done movies, but they weren't widely distributed, so it's almost kind of like I didn't do it. And so when I went to go out to get investors, I went to try to talk to people who had those particular social issues that were focused on the movie, because that's something they want to buy into. So media companies, record labels that they want to focus on that. So the idea was to take their music that they have with their artists and build the music around the social issue. That way, we do two things. One, we get their music and artists in front of other artists and other consumers, but also I get to focus on the social issues. So I try to find social issues that are impactful, that I feel that people want to listen to, that people are, and that's something that touches a bone because we're dealing with media, and media is a very emotional thing. People attract to things emotionally good and bad. If they feel strong emotionally bad about something, it's a subject matter they're focusing, then they'll look at it. If it's something that makes them feel really happy and great, Marvel movies, superhero movies, people love them. It just makes them really good. But documentaries about things that are intrinsic in our society make people feel a certain emotional way that they want to learn more. And so, Red All Over was about gun violence. It's about mental health and how people deal with those things every single day. It's not just something that just one character did, but they're things that people deal with every single day. The Greenwood Avenue Project, it's about the Tulsa Race Massacre, something that a lot of people don't even know it happened. That the government went and bombed this area that was very prosperous based off of a rumor and a lie, something that didn't necessarily happen. And so there are subject matters that people don't traditionally may know and talk about, but it's also things that people deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are people who create only for the purpose of entertainment because I think their vision is to be able to, there's so much harshness, and the reality sometimes is not very pleasant, and it can lead
Mhm.
to all kinds of mental health issues. So
Yeah.
they want to, the whole purpose is just entertaining, so that you go into a cinema or you watch something on television and you forget the realities of life. But I feel that it's also very important to bring about this awareness as what you are doing, and therefore centering your storytelling around themes that, yes, it happens on a daily basis, but for people to then actually reflect on it and understand what the people who experienced it have gone through, and also what you can do in order to not have that happen to you, or how can you change things. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, so there are two very different approaches when it comes to filmmaking and storytelling. And I can see that obviously you do it with a heart and with passion. So that's really amazing. You've been doing films for so many years now. What has been the most unexpected challenge? You mentioned one, which was to get funding for your films, right? But outside of that, what, as a filmmaker, what is one other challenge that completely was unexpected, and how did you overcome that?
You know what? Among other things, funding is always it's always
Yeah,
a
yeah.
hurdle. It's always a hurdle
Yeah.
because what you're doing is that you're trying to find people who have the same idea or vision of what you're trying to do. And trying to find people who want to put money into those things is a hard thing because you don't know.
Yeah.
So I probably get more no's than I get yes, but so it's about numbers. How many people can I reach out to? You look at what they've done before and say, okay, this is something that they might be interested in. And sometimes the temperature of just the world and environment changes. And so things that I may have pitched 10 years ago that nobody was interested in, now they're all interested in it just based off of what's happening in the world today.
Has it
So
actually happened that it's taken you 10 years to
yes,
work?
yes. I have a project now, a series that I have been working on for a period of time. And a lot of it had to do with the pandemic, but I went and tried to pitch it. There was some interest, and then the pandemic happened, and priorities changed. They just changed. And now it's just now resurfacing, and people like, okay, hey, I'm interested in this. So it's a matter of this game is really the way this entertainment world is a game of waiting. Hurry up and wait. And I'm a firm believer that everybody gets the opportunity to sit at the table. Everybody does. It's just that when you sit at the table, you got to have something to say.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people they want this opportunity, but when they get to the table to sit down and say, hey, this is what I got, they're not prepared. They're not prepared. I get people all the time come to me and they have ideas and concepts that they want to do. And I start to ask some questions about exactly what it is. Because if you don't have a clear vision about what you want to do, I can't really foster that. I can't really push you in a certain direction if you are not clear. It doesn't have to be 100%, but at least you're pretty close to know exactly what you want to do. And sometimes that could be a problem because people they have an idea, but ideas don't necessarily translate to reality. You have to have some other things that go behind it. Probably the biggest obstacle that I run into is just finding really good collaborative partners. A lot of times I think about the story about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And David Salzman tells a story about how they got the deal to do the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Him and Quincy Jones were going to produce together. And he said that everything was great. They signed the paperwork, they was going to do sure thing. And he said that after that, Quincy Jones never came to help him on any of the shows. He felt like his part was over with. And so when you partner with people, it's important to me. It's almost like being married. It's important that you have very clear expectations for people, what it is that they bring to the table. Some people just bring the deal,
Yeah.
and
But
that's
then you
okay
have to,
too.
yeah, but then you have to be clear from the start, that's going to be your role and nothing beyond that.
Yes.
So then you're not expecting.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I get that.
That is true. Other people bring actors, other people bring other opportunities. So if you're not clear, like in your marriage or your relationship about what the expectations are, it's not going to turn out very well. And so I have learned one of the big obstacles is to ask questions, really detailed questions. Everybody's excited about signing the deal at the beginning. Everybody's excited about getting their checks, and they're all excited about that. But the work, this is a business. This is work. This is not, I guarantee you, if it was so easy, everybody'd be doing it. I really do. But it's work. And sometimes people don't really consider how much this itty bitty. If you need a truck to be on set, somebody has to orchestrate that. If somebody needs to wear a certain shirt, somebody has to orchestrate that. If you want the makeup a certain way, somebody has to orchestrate. All those things have to be orchestrated together. And if you don't have good either department heads or collaborative producers to work with, it's not going to be successful.
Yeah. So again, we come back to collaboration. You mentioned earlier about people coming to you and you guiding them and advising them. So you clearly also have a role as a mentor for young or not even young, but aspiring filmmakers. So what has your journey been like as a mentee and like between being a mentee and a mentor? What kind of a journey do you have? What are some of the steps that you take, and what are some of the steps that you expect from the people whom you're mentoring to take?
So when people come to me with a project or just insight, I use this analogy of looking at films like children. So there's the child that you can look out the window. They have to stay in the yard. They have to stay in front of the house. And you need to be able, they need to be in earshot of you all the times. Then there's the child that you send to the store to get your lottery tickets. He's playing three streets over. As long as he's in the house by the street lights come on, it's not like you don't care about him, but it's kind of like it's okay. So, what is this project? Is this something that's so dear to your heart that you want to be there and you want to be every intricate aspect of it? Or is this the project to where you just wanted to get out to the universe, you want to use it as a calling card, you wanted to be able to move on to other things? It's important to you, but not at the same time where it has to be exactly like this. And once we can get past that particular insight of what it is that you're doing, then I can make suggestions of my opinion about how you move forward. And a lot of times happens more than once. Most filmmakers, the first time say, "This is the child I want is close to me." And we have to really break that down. Why is that? And after we've had that conversation, especially if that first part, they realize it's a child they want to go and play down the street and everything. Because the thing about it is, no matter how great your idea is, it does nobody any justice by being on your computer.
Yeah.
It doesn't give anybody anything about this great idea. You turn into the person at the end of the bar telling about this great idea you had that was never executed. Nobody wants to be that person. So you have to be realistic about what it is that you're trying to do. What is the overall you're trying to accomplish? Yes, it's great. You want to make money, you want to be famous and everything, but what are the bigger goals in your life that you're trying to accomplish? Where are you really trying to go 5, 10, 15 years down the line? And that makes a determination of what I suggest how you move your past. I look at myself like a travel agent when it comes to film and music. I've probably been some places that you want to go. Some places I spent short periods of time, other places I spent long periods of time. So you tell me where you're trying to go, and I can tell you what's good in that place and what's bad, or you should probably just don't leave the airport and just keep going somewhere else.
Yeah, because that's your experience.
Yes.
You've had such a vast experience and such an enriching experience that obviously for you to understand where that person is probably a lot easier than for someone who hasn't had that kind of experience. Some misconceptions that a lot of young creatives have about making it in the industry. So, what are some of these misconceptions? Because a lot of people just come, and you've mentioned some of it now, like a lot of people come with, they're so confident and they have a idea, or they may have even more than one idea, but and they think that yes, we've got an idea or a couple of ideas and we will make it. But how, what are some of these misconceptions that you can help clarify?
I get it. You have this idea that you think is the best thing that's going to translate. It's almost kind of like the same thing when I get music clients who come to me with their music and I ask them to describe who they are and they say music is unique. The problem with unique is that radio programmers can't put unique in a box. There's programming doing it today. There's the dance, there's pop music, there's slow jams. There are all these different boxes. And if you're unique, there's no box for unique.
Yeah, and also unique is, I feel, a very generic word.
Yes. Yes.
So,
So
yeah,
you need to really have a definition of who you are and how you move through. The next thing is when I was younger, and this is a pitfall, I had an idea, this idea that I wanted to do that I thought was the best thing in the world. And I go pitch it to people and they be like, oh, they passed. And I can understand why they kept passing on my ideas. What I realized is that Streaming platforms, distributors, media companies are, although they traffic in creativity, they're corporate entities. And so it's important that they do things that works from the corporate background. These people get 401k, they have PTO. They don't necessarily want to do anything that's going to mess up their job. So every quarter or so, they have these meetings where they go out and send these people out to do grocery with a grocery list of things. Say, hey, I need late night programming. We need a children's program or whatever it may be. So they go take meetings and they listen to all these different pitches. They're looking for a certain thing that they've been out went out to go shop for. And so if you would you could have the best late night show in the world, but if they're looking for children's programming, they're going to pass because that's not what they're buying at this moment. If I send my kids to the grocery store to get eggs and butter and they come back with bread because it's on sale, great for getting the bread, but I needed eggs and butter. And so it works the same way. You have to, and that's a hard thing, knowing what people want. You have to find out what people want and pitch them that way. You also have to not be so narrow-minded because they need to be able to feel like if you pitch something to someone and they think it's okay and they want to change something, you got to be a little stand your firm about certain things you feel like need to change, but be flexible in the process. Be collaborative in the process. And also, too, sometimes in order to save pitches or even save projects from moving forward, you need to be able to have other things in your mind and how you can do that. They want to see that these relationships are not just a one-time relationship. This is something that we can continue. So you might come to pitch a show about some puppy dogs and they don't like that. They said, what else you have? And you said, that's all I got. That doesn't really make for a sustainable relationship. So they need to see that you're not just a one-hit pony. They need to see that you have other things that are possible. And also you're willing to either maybe even do some of their stuff that you had no idea doing. So being collaborative in the process, being open to the process and not being so narrow-minded about it has to be exactly this way will get you a lot of really get you long in this industry.
Yeah, and also it's a way of learning because
Yes.
and also getting ideas that you may not you're absolutely right. You need to be open to these ideas. I think that's very important. You talk a lot about fatherhood. So how has being a father shaped your perspective as a storyteller?
Children are like unwritten stories. If you don't like when we do projects, I do spend a lot of time with developing characters. I give them birthdays, I give them hobbies, even if we never see those things on screen, just so you can push them in a certain direction so the character won't just be doing anything. We got a school mom who's great and all of a sudden she's on drugs. So what that makes why is that? And so with children, you have to do the same thing. They don't come out just knowing. And it took me some time to understand. I'm like, you don't know how to do this? No, because I didn't show them. I didn't tell them, I didn't show them how to do this or provide an opportunity for them to learn these particular skills. And so children are like that. When they get to a certain age, they have their own ideas about how things should be. And you have to understand that and you have to respect that. And I try to go from a perspective of listen to what my daughter says, really try to be present and listen. And then once she's finished, I give my perspective of what I believe that she can do. Because just because I think somebody can do something doesn't mean that they can do it. It's just what I think. They have to believe. And so I have to instill those things, the confidence and other things inside of them that they can do this so they'll be able to accomplish certain things. And also understanding that children also have limitations. They're not me.
Yeah.
I'm a great multitasker. I do a variety of different things. I have a lot of things on my plate. My daughter's not necessarily that particular person. She can't do all those things all at one time, at least not at this particular moment. So I have to be conscious of that they're not me. Your children aren't you. They're a whole different person with ideas and concepts of their own. And once you understand and respect that and approach it from an aspect that you can probably, doesn't mean you can't guide them, but just they have different personalities and they respond. I respond to stimulation differently than other people, and just like she does. So you have to be conscious of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So let's say you want to reboot a classic of the 80s, a movie. What would it be and why?
Wow, that's a really low. Let me
I
think here.
know I threw you off, but
Yeah. Okay, let's think here. What show?
the
A
show.
lot of the shows that when I was a little kid, I looked at a lot of obscure TV. And so I looked at a lot of stuff that when I mentioned it to people now, they just kind of don't remember that show. There should be a show on TV called Rock Cop. Stephen Bochco produced the show Rock Cop. And so they would sing opera type songs throughout the whole show. It was an urban setting, people getting arrested in jail, and they all singing this opera type songs. It lasts about almost a season, and they eventually took it off because nobody wanted to see that. But I that is probably an example of when I say that to people, they be like, I don't remember the show. And they go Google it, it's like, oh my God, it actually did exist. So a show, wow, that's a hard one. The one show that I think I'll probably reboot with somebody else, one of the producer partners, one of the producers that I know right now, she's about to do it, is the Barbershop series. They're about to reboot the Barbershop. And that was something that I would like to do. I'm in a wheelhouse of focusing on films. There are a couple of films that I think I want to redo. There's a movie called Some Like It Hot. It's a really old movie. I think the themes of the movie really make for a great film today, just the things about making things happen, sexuality and things of that sort. I think it's a good movie that can be rebooted today. One of my favorite movies is Yentl by Barbara Streisand. Barbara Streisand did a movie about a woman it was a period piece where women weren't allowed to read the Torah or learn the Torah or the Bible. That idea went into one of the movies that I have now called Ebony Hustle and Ebony Hustle 2. Ebony Hustle and Ebony Hustle 2 is about ex-stripper turned private investigator. And the reason why in my mind, they correlate sync with each other is because Ebony Hustle is about a strong Black female lead. It's about a woman who knows exactly what she do. And traditionally in those particular situations, it's usually somebody trying to manipulate them. But she's not to be manipulated. She knows what she wants. She's going to go out what she wants. And so those things with Yentl saying, I want to learn it, and there's nothing you're going to stop me from doing it. I like strong stories like that, kind of take people out of the element, what they normally would do, and propel them to where they have to make decisions to do things. That movie has such a great love triangle. She loves one guy, the guy loves his other woman, but you can't be with this person because it's such a beautiful movie.
Amazing. I should look it up. Okay, so how do you define success at this point in your career? That's going to be my final question to you.
Some years ago, I did this interview, and they asked me the question, which most people do, ask me, why are you a filmmaker? And usually I have a really canned response with that. But this day, the universe put something different on my heart. And I said to her, because I want to live forever. And I do through my work, not just for my children, but through my work, I live forever. I look at old black and white movies all the time, and I have a snapshot into that creator's mind at that moment and how they see things. And in essence, I resurrect them every time I look at the movie. I look at success not so much about how many streams I get, what awards I get, but the fact that I'm able to, I look at comments of my movies online, and people have various different comments. The fact that they're engaging and they have a perspective about it, that's success to me. There's 24 hours in a day, and I'm asking somebody to spend an hour and a half to look at my stuff. That's powerful because they don't have to. And then when they go to step further and make a comment about it, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, I've made an impact. And so now, whatever their opinion is, they're constantly talking about it or talking to people, or somebody say something to it, they have an opinion about it. So I live forever. So that's success to me, how people see me and remember my work.
Yeah. No, that is, and as a creative person and as a filmmaker, of course, your work will, and we see it now, films that were made, like you mentioned, black and white, and films that were made years and years ago are now, a lot of people are picking them up and black and white, they're making them into color, they're touching them up, they're working with these films because they are classics and they need to be remembered. And that's always the case when it comes to, and I think we're fortunate, I feel, as creative people, whether it's a podcast or whatever form of creativity it is, it's something which will always be there in
Yeah.
the universe for anyone, anytime who wants to hear it or watch it. And you're absolutely right. I think that is success, to be remembered always. And yeah, it's been wonderful talking to you, John. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed your very insightful thoughts and really enjoyed talking to you as well. So thank you. I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much. As I stated before, thank you for allowing me your platform. It was a delight to speak with you, and I hope that we can talk again. Stay
Absolutely.
focused.
Stay focused. Totally. Stay focused and do not deviate from the mission. And
That's right.
the mission and the vision. I think both
Yes.
are equally important. So, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too as well.